Hello friends of the Teeworlds, chilling back again with another episode. We're staying on the server side, and today I want to talk about player and character variables. So let's open the source directory with VS Code and quickly test if the build succeeds and everything is working fine. So there are two interesting files. Well, let's say four, including the corresponding headers. I was reading this, headers. So we have character.h and character.cpp. Those are in-game server entities, and we have player. What? Player? No, double P's. Yeah, under game server we have player.h. And don't confuse it with the client side, players.cpp, game client, that's the client obviously. We want player singular under game server player.cpp. And yeah, so those files hold the character and player classes, and we use the player class already in the last episode in oh my gosh, where was it? Constats. Here, this is a array of player objects. So if we click on it, we can see it's a array with the size max clients. It's defined in gameContext.h, and it's of type CPlayer. So I covered the types quickly, having an integer, short or float, and a character. You can also have your, so to say, own types, being structs or classes. That's object-oriented magic. A class is basically just a compilation of multiple types and functions. So it's I don't know, watch some basic object-oriented programming videos or tutorials about what classes are. I'm not going to cover it in full detail here. So this is basically an array of player objects, and we can click on here, and then we are in the player.h file. Okay, so and this is, as I said, an array. That's why it's an A and a P of pointers. So it's an array of pointers pointing on this player object, and every player who connects to the game gets one object allocated, and this object stays there until the player disconnects. And the character is different because every alive T gets a character allocated, and if the T dies, so if you fall into spikes, if you get killed by other players, if you self-kill or whatever, or if you join the spectators, or any of those things where you have no in-game T representing you, then your character is gone. So your character will be fully destroyed when you die, and even the character object will be completely deleted and will be null. And this can be dangerous if you want to access the character object of a dead T and you do not check it correctly. This can crash the server, but I will go into more detail later on. Okay, so let's start with player. Let's look to the player header file, and as we can see here, all the function definitions and the variables that a player has, and we can put somewhere in the public scope. So in classes you have a private and a public scope. As you can see here, private, everything below is private, and we have a public scope. Everything below this public is public and accessible somewhere else, and it's usually easier in the beginning to make everything public so you do not have any complications. It's very bad style, but I'm showing you the hackish, easy to get into development way, not the good coding habits here. Keep that in mind. And by default it's private, So this one is in private scope because there's no public. If there's no public, it's private. Okay. So if I would define a variable here, it would be private. So we want to define a public variable. So we go to the end of the public thing, and let's also mark it here with our my mod. Put in here your signature or whatever you want to call it, where you say from here on are my changes. This is usually a good comment that you can also refer to yourself and see where you made your changes in the file. And let's define a variable here. Let's call it mdeaths. And if you define variables inside a object or as this member variable, so to say, it's the Teeworlds convention to prefix them with a lowercase m and an underscore, and then starting with the uppercase letter. Jesus. I guess M stands for member, but actually I've no idea what this stands for. Just do it like that. Yeah, much raw tutorial over here. Okay, so we defined this variable. What can we do with this now? So we can increment it somewhere. Let's search in the player.cpp file for die. Is there? Oh yeah, so dying is happening in the character. So it's a function of the character. So we go to character.cpp die. You can find that by searching globally for character, then : die. This will be this function here. Because this function is defined in the character class, you can see it here. It is prefixed with this character : This is the object-oriented magic happening, but the function name is die, and it's part of the character class. Okay, so in here we can access the player. So it's easy to go from the character to the player and from the player to the character. And in character.h we can search for player, and here we have get player. So if you want to search through the functions and variables our object has, for example our character object, it's usually the easiest to search through the header file, because it's a little bit more easy to read because it's just an overview. There's no implementation details of all those functions. And we have get player here. So we could directly use the m_p_player pointer, but we can also use the get player method, which returns this pointer. So those could be used in the same way. So we can use m_player here, m_p_player, or we could use get player, and the code would work pretty much the same. Okay, so when somebody dies, let's see what is happening here. Okay, so we can put at the end of the die method, we can put in mPlayer. There's probably some. Is there some deaths variable already? I don't know. Maybe it's tracked somewhere already. I don't know. I don't think so. So yeah, we can increment our variable here. So incrementing variables is assigning it to itself +1. So if the variable starts at 0, we say 0 + 1, and then the result of this computation gets stored in this variable. So we increment them basically, and the next time the value is 1, so we say 1 + 1 is 2, and then we store the value 2 inside the death variable. And I can hardly pronounce that. And there's a short writing for that. If you want to add something to a variable, you can just write += and then 1. So it will increment it by 1 every time. So we could also say 2 here. So if you die, your deaths get incremented by 2. This doesn't make so much sense. And there's also in C++ a shorthand for just incrementing it by 1. You see that a lot, so I just wanted to show that. nobody writes the full version of that one. Especially in the beginning, this can make a lot of sense, but yeah, get used to reading this for incrementing it by one. So those are the same, right? Those two do the same thing. Okay, that was a lot of explanation for nothing. Cool. So now that we have this variable incremented here, we should probably also make sure to give it an initial value. I think most C++ compilers set member integers to 0 anyways, but it's good style to initialize your variables. And in object orientation you have constructors. Those are methods that get called when the object is instantiated. So this means if a player joins the game and there's a player object created, there's a method that always gets called in the beginning. And you can find those by searching the class name, so CPlayer : CPlayer. So the function is called the same name as the class, and this is the instance, the constructor where all the variables get assigned initially. And as you can see, some of the variables are set to 0 here, like spawning and so on. And here we can put in, maybe with a space, our variable and set it to 0 to make sure everything works fine. Okay, so now nothing changed in-game, nothing happens. It's just a variable tracked in the background, and yeah, there's no output for it. So we can use our recon command from the last episode. And I always forget where it was defined. It was in game context, right? But yeah, here it is. Okay, so if you have the code from the last episode still, then we can reuse that. If not, then just type it out again. And here we can add, we are looping over all players and printing their names. And we can also print their the amounts of times they died. You can see I try to avoid to pronounce this horrible word. And then we can get the variable from the player. So we have the player over here. So if the player object is not existing, we continue. But if it's existing, we can, then this is the array I talked about, the array of pointers at the current index. So this points to our player object. And when we have a player object, we can access variables. And to access variables on pointers, you have this arrow syntax for, that's how pointers work. So p self is also a pointer, as you can see on this arrow. And also the p shows that it's a pointer. As I said, I do not expect you to fully understand what pointers are, but they are things pointing on things. So they're holding the address of a specific data, and they are prefixed with a star. So this is defining a pointer. So if you, I can quickly dive into the syntax of it, but I will probably make a more detailed pointer video at some point. So if we have info with the value 2, this is a variable which holds the value 2. And if I say int pointer foo, this is a variable, and assigning it to 2 does not make too much sense because it does not hold a number like a number 2 or value. It holds the address where the number is stored. So we can dereference foo, and then pfoo points to the address of foo, and so it points also on the number 2. So if we increment the foo and the pfoo, it will also increment this value because it's the same storage on the memory. But yeah, this is, just ignore that. Just a quick detail dive on pointers. So we are using this pointer with the arrow syntax, and then we can get the deaths. I should have probably chosen a different name or variable so I can avoid the pronunciation, but whatever. So this way we can access this variable. And now if we compile the server and we run it, do I have this here? Cool. And we go in game. We can see I died 0 times. If I kill now, hopefully the server doesn't crash. And if I do it again, you can see I died 1 time. And the same goes for that. And I can connect my dummy real quick so you have some some more data here. Stats. So you can see my dummy just joined, he never died, and I did die 2 times. Okay, so those are player variables. You can use them for all kinds of things that you want to persist over death. And yeah, so let's dive into character variables. Okay, so go to character, and here we do the same at the end of the public, but still in public we put in our comment saying my modification. This comment should ideally be always the same comment, so that you can search through the whole source code and find your, yeah, okay, it worked, but I didn't really bother keeping a pattern here, but usually you should name it always the same, so you can find it later on where you made your changes. That can come in handy. Okay, so we want another integer and we call it shots. There's probably a variable holding the amount of shots fired. Usually before you define your own variables and do your own things and try to build something, check the Teeworlds code if there's something existing already which does the same thing, but for the sake of it I will just do it myself. And yeah, let's go. Okay, so we want to increment shots, and I know by experience that shooting happens in the character class, which also makes sense if you think about it. You need a alive player to fire a shot. So everything that belongs to alive players, to actual Ts, if they do something, hooking, jumping, firing, moving, colliding, and all those things dying, that belongs into the character class. So we search for fire weapon, or how was it called? Yeah, there's fire weapon. Okay, cool. So we have a return statement here. If the reload timer isn't 0, it will do nothing. So if we increment our shots here, it would probably also count shots that are not actually fired, because we pressed the mouse button too fast and the server said you can't shoot that fast. So we want to track actual shots, so make sure to put it under the return statement. Those if statements with a check if something is actually valid data, or checking a condition and having a return statement, those are called guard cases, just in case you wanted to know that. Oh, here's another one. Yeah, it's another check with, I don't know. So we probably want to put it to go super safe. Yeah, here's also the magical limit of 125 milliseconds, microseconds, I don't know, I think it's milliseconds, 125 milliseconds limit that you can shoot. So yeah, the original Teeworlds developer, I think it was Magnus back then, decided this is a limit a human cannot overcome with his clicking speed, so you cannot shoot faster than this. And if you do, it would get tracked as shot if you put the variable increment here, but we want to track the actual shots. So let's put it under the last return statement. Oh yeah, we could also track shots for specific weapons, as we can see here. If we put it in here, it's inside the scope of case weapon, ending with this squiggly bracket here. So we would only track gunshots. But we want to track all shots, all kinds of shots. And so we go, yeah, probably not the best spot to put it, but can put another comment here, my mod, and we can increment shots. So this will track every successfully shot, every successfully fired shot, no matter which weapon. Okay, and then it will increment it. And we can also display it in our game context constats admin command and put in here, maybe put a equal sign here and say shots equal. Oh yeah, I explained the format specifier already, but just to repeat it, this %d stands for, I guess, decimal, digit, whatever, and it's representing a integer you pass in as argument in here. So we do the same. Oh yeah, and now this is getting tricky, because if we put in here, let's do a crash bug for now. That's good training. So we put in here get character, so we get the player, and from the player we get the character. You could probably also just directly get the character, but yeah, let's do it like that. So from the player object we access the character, and then we get shots. Okay. So as I said, the when the player dies, the character object will be deleted, and then this will be a null pointer. So this is null, and when the player is dead, and when you try to access an attribute of a null pointer, then the server will crash. It's a famous null pointer exception, you know, probably. That's how it's called in Java, I think. So you should always make sure that this is not null, but we do not implement a check here, so I want to show you what can go wrong and how you can fix your crashes. Okay, so let's build that again. Okay, recon stats. So I have 0 shots fired. If I fire once, I have 1 shot fired. If I fire multiple times, I have 14 shots fired. And if I kill now, the whole character object, which holds the shots variable, gets deleted. And if I check my stats again, I have 0 shots fired. So if you want to persist your shots fired, then you have to make it a player variable, not a character variable, because characters get wiped out on death. Okay, so if I now join the spectators, so my character is deleted because there's no T in-game representing me. As I said, the same can happen when you die. Okay, let's quickly do it. Now my character is gone, and now it's back again. And in all this time, the character pointer is a null pointer and invalid. So if I join the spectators and I do stats, you see connection problems. And if I go back to the server log, we can see a segmentation fault. So the server crashed. And why did it crash? Because it tried to access get character, but I was spectator, so there was no character. So always, if you want to access character things, you have to check the same. Oh, the same would have happened if we have removed this player check, because if the player is not there, this will be a null pointer as well. So if we remove that check, the stats command would fail every time you launch it. We can add a if the same guard case for a character. So, but this basically removes the whole message. I can quickly show it, because if the player is dead, it will not even show the his name in the list anymore. And that's probably not desired behavior. If I do stats, I'm in here, and if I spectate, and if I do stats again, nothing happens because I'm dead and it completely ignores my entry. We can do a small workaround here and have a variable holding my shots. So let's say in shots equals 0. And if there's a character, let's copy that, or let's type it out. Especially in the beginning, it helps to type things out. pself underscore IP players. Okay, typing out without the completion is maybe a bit cheating, but get character. So if the character is existent, note that we have here an exclamation mark, which means if it's not existent, and here we have no exclamation mark. So if it's existent, then we can put our squiggly brackets in here, and if this is true, we can say shots equals pself players I get character, and then we get shots. So even if it's a null pointer, it's safe to check only the existence of the pointer. But if you want to go further from the pointer and access a member variable, it's not safe to do that when it's a null pointer. And what we do here is we assign for every player in this loop, we assign a shots variable and say the value is 0. And if the character is existing, we overwrite the value 0 with the current shots fired. And if it's not existent, this code does not get executed and the shots are 0. So if I'm dead, I have 0 shots fired. Let's see if that works. As usual, my code is untested. Oh! Yeah, it's always good to look at warnings, and we made a mistake here. Variable shots set but not used. That makes sense because we just assigned it and we never used it. Because we are still using get character shots here, nothing changed actually. We have to, of course, replace, oh my gosh, shots here. Oh, and a small thing on formatting. You can put, as I said in one of the prior episodes, you can put as many spaces in here as you want. You can even put in new lines. And if it's in one statement and one function call, it's usually good style to indent that. And then we can split all arguments in here and have them all at the same indentation level. This is just some style so you can read it better. Usually it's good style to never reach over 80 characters in one line. Yeah, so as we can see, we have 773 column, Jesus, and here we have 82, so this one is too long, but it's fine. But this one was very long and hard to read. You had to scroll over here. This should be avoided generally. Okay, so now we have it nicely formatted, and our shots variable is used in here. Okay, so now we should have fixed our crash bug, and the warning is gone. That's good. Okay, so if we go back to the server, type in stats, that works. If I fire a shot, that works. If I spectate now, my shots are 0, and the server didn't crash, and it tracked me because it, as I said, it went this way, and it said shots are 0. Is the character alive? No, it isn't. So this code was ignored, and then it still had shot 0. Right. Okay. So I guess that's it for this episode. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, or any wishes for next topics. Then see you next week.